So I'm going to go back and forth between asking you both questions and asking you separate questions. So we'll start with both of you. What challenges did you have to overcome to complete the production of this film? And what is an example of the guerrilla style filmmaking that you used to get what you wanted for the film?
I'll just jump in and say we had to, well, day one of production, we were in our one of our investors' vintage T-Bird classic cars, and day player driving, me next to them, camera and sound in the back, and those old cars have a lot of play, and their line was, "You got to hold on tight if you ride with me," literally, and then they lost control of the car. Like
Oh
we
my
had like
God.
a we had a tiny 4 car pileup, like just little fender benders.
Right.
But that was really scary. We didn't get the ticket because we weren't. It was the car behind that ran into us anyway. It was scary. And then at the very end of the movie in picture lock, when we were editing, and we'd run out of money for other editors, and we were just like going into it on our own. As we hit picture lock, I was like, "What's that burning smell?" It's like toast, and I looked out, and across the way was a big constructed block long of condos that were just framed out in wood, and in the center was this solid orange flame. And we called the fire department, and ended up being this 6 alarm fire with 200 trucks, and like it was it. So we had to carry the movie out with embers. Like, remember, Harry? Like I
Yeah,
got a burn on my
there was
ear.
embers in the air as we were carrying the movie out. We put it in the car, thinking like somehow if the fire got really close and everything started on fire, we would drive the car away. But then we started waking up all the neighbors all around the block. We were waking everybody up
We
out
were
of their
the
beds
one.
because it was probably 1 in the morning
Yeah, it was probably like 3 in the morning, and we were the only ones up. And
That's
yeah, I
in
like
the
amazing.
to think,
neighborhood. We called it in and then we like started knocking on doors. Yeah.
yeah, independent film saves lives. That's
There
just
you go.
I would
Harry.
say also, something that we had to overcome that was huge, was finding, funding this thing,
Yeah.
initially we had wanted to shoot on film. We had,
Ah,
a lot of our favorite movies were, at the time we started writing, were shot on film, just,
yeah.
just beautiful old 70s classics, Taxi Driver,
Right.
Midnight Cowboy,
Right.
and I loved all that nighttime photography. You could get those beautiful velvety blacks and the shine on the street, and everyone kept telling us we needed to shoot on video. We were not going to get enough money to shoot on film, and we were fighting against that. At least I was tooth and nail for probably a full couple of years, and then finally it was getting we were getting a little money raised, and then right then there were a few feature films that came out on video,
Yeah.
and some of that was because of Dogma 95, and
Right.
suddenly people were working with obstructions and things. There was this kind of rawness um, in the construction of the film that actually started to look a little bit beautiful all on its own.
Yeah.
And you could kind of see all these kind of flip pans, these whip pans, and the kind of smallness of the camera that was sort of coinciding with the kind of classical film grammar of continuity editing. All of that started to look a little better to us. And we
Cool.
watched Julian Donkey Boy, which was shot on video,
Yeah.
transferred to film, but they saved all the money on the excess film, right? They just did the film transfer. So we did it, but we were right at the forefront of digital video technology.
I
So
was
we
gonna
were
say.
editing on Final Cut Pro 1,
Oh my God.
and we had to also find, we were like doing all this research to figure out how to get
not
grain.
to mention that you
Um,
finally get the funding, you get into production, that's a miracle. You get through
yeah,
production, that's another miracle. You've got to edit the movie. And then it's just you, it's just very few people at that point. And there's the year plus of just the poverty, and it is a crazy thing to make a film with no funding, and just to remember, like, it takes a toll, not having money is rough on the soul.
yeah. Because it takes years, and because what we had was time. And so we just gave time and time and time, and years went by making
Yeah.
that.
So, Harry, what state of mind do you imagine Valentine in when the events of the story take place? Is she spiraling downward or being uplifted? And what direction did you want to portray?
It's funny. I've been all morning looking through all my, 3 feet of files of by hook or by crook ephemera. And I actually am reading notes that I took. And, I feel like she, he's stressed out. Isn't that funny?
I know.
He's stressed out, by the scams. He's uplifted by the friendship
Right.
and really wants, but is, sort of, platonically falling in love with Shy, and sort of looking over and wants to make his hair like Shy, in the blue bathroom. He's
Mhm.
kind of looking over at Shy and putting his hair, changing the part so that his part is in the same area as Shy's part is. And when they're in the bar, and they're drinking the tequila, he's looking over at Shy and like, okay, this is the way you drink it. And, I'm gonna copy this guy because he's cool,
Yeah.
And so I think that he's both uplifted and then he's stressed out by the scams. And that's why
Yeah.
I think when he's in the living room kind of crying and saying, the tiny waitress,
Right.
from the donut shop from when we were little, like she knows everything that we've been doing. So in the back of his mind, it's like there's some stress in it and it's sort of taking a toll.
Very
And
cool.
Shy's a little late on the uptake with realizing the stakes of what's going on,
Yeah.
like neither Shy nor Valentine obviously are sort of reliable protagonists or particularly responsible characters. So as loving as Shy ends up being, at the beginning of the movie, there's a kind of instrumentalization of this kind of funny little guy, and then it starts to actually change right there in that living room
Very
scene.
good. So I'll ask you, Silas. Shy as a character was an optimist. What interior feeling did you have that connected to the optimism of the
Oh,
character?
I
And
mean,
what scene do you think that optimism stands out in how you
that's
performed?
interesting. I love that because I think of Shy as a bit delusional and not, maybe nihilistic, but I am definitely those things plus an optimist. I mean, I think in my band Tribe 8, we all had like nicknames for each other's point of view, and I was Hope Springs Eternal. I was like, there's going to, there's this other side. I hate to waste things, and so if there's a traumatic event, I want to think of what I got from that. Like I got this added skill, so I'm it just is a way I've managed to navigate life. And but I think that Shy does have this, he's got a bit of this nihilism. Wants this, it's like I think of fame or outlawish. These grand gestures. They're a way for trying to make up for not having love. Right? It's like massive love from strangers will heal me from having this and not love in my personal life, but it doesn't. They're totally different things. And I think that's the journey of Shy. Is he wants this. He wants to be somebody in the world by being an outlaw, being whatever. He wants to. It's his objective for the losing his dad and losing the and growing up in a certain class and dealing with that burden. But then he really, over the course, and it's right around when he goes to see Valentine and Valentine's upset, that he starts to show up for the person next to him, and that is the heroic gesture. In my personal life, I'm a political person, and it goes global. But I've learned like arm's reach politics is actually the hardest to do, and to show up for. And I think it's just that the grand gestures are often these small acts of service that nobody is going to write about, but make us who we are.
Very good. For both of
I
you,
would, I wanted to add to that is
yeah, no worries.
as you're talking, Silas, it occurs to me that the character of Valentine and the character of Shy are kind of in maybe not exactly equal proportions, but in sort of both of us in our real lives, where we both have this kind of completely, open-hearted, sort of chaotic, visionary dreamer selves. And then there's the kind of Shy character, which is like, I got to get this done. I got to, fuck these people, I got to make, I'm going to go make a different, where it's a little more like goal to goal focused, even if they're weird delusional goals.
Yeah.
And I think that it's interesting to think about, creativity and the way that, at its best, it sort of pulls things out of you in a not therapeutic way, but you're sort of going deep, offering depth, and then looking back, you see, oh, there was a lot of truth there, and that makes sense because we were sort of giving it our all.
Wow, that very nicely observed.
Wait, I
Very
want to add something too, which is I think the day before the movie,
yeah.
the day before the movie premiered at the Castro, we were all really fucking nervous and didn't know how it was going to go. And it was barely done. The sound wasn't done. It was just crazy.
Oh
And
man.
Silas woke up and was like, I had a dream that, what was it? That Madonna was at the Do you remember the dream? It was like
Oh,
there was a line around the block and Madonna was trying to get in and couldn't get in or something like that.
something like that.
It
I
was
can't
some
remember.
super positive scenario. The whole rest of the world has anxiety dreams. Like the movie was starting, or I had to be, do a speech, and I was, I had no pants. Silas is the opposite.
That's beautiful.
Delusional
Madonna was a
dreaming.
fan and couldn't get in.
Okay, again, for both of you, how was the story outlined? Did you improv scenes or was it outlined and scripted? And did you know the ending when you started shooting?
We did know the ending. That's one of the things we knew. We
Yeah.
wrote several scripts before. We did one that was like noir film, take out the classic, straight white guys in and put, our characters in, and not have it be about, coming out and all that. But
Right.
we weren't connected enough. Like Bound had come out not long before our
Uh,
film, and that was so beautifully done. That was such a like great example of putting new characters in the center of the story, but not having it be about that at all. And it holds up so well. We're doing an interview with her later, and
oh,
but that wasn't our jam, and then it ended up being like we had ourselves in the world, the things that I do and the things that Harry did. And one of the things Harry did was write these beautiful plays, and a lot of the writing came from that, and very little, if any, of the movie is improv. It's all scripted, and I'll hand it off to you, Harry.
Yeah, it's even in my did these sort of performance solo evening length performance monologues, and sometimes I'd talk for an hour and a half on stage, and people would think I was making it up,
Shocker.
and then they would come the next night and it was exactly the same.
ah, ah,
So the amount of preparation that we had done, the amount of scripting that we had done, the amount of choreographic scripting that we had done, like, preparatory blocking and stuff was like through the roof because, of course, we had our plates full. We were making a movie for the first time, directing for the first time. Everyone's doing everything for the first time. And if a few of the producers that we brought on, each one said the same thing. This is basically a bad idea. It's impossible. So to counteract that, you need to be prepared. And so there was very very little, if basically no improv. I would say no. I
wow,
think an actor needs to meet the
surprises
moment.
me.
There's an
Mhm.
improvisatory element about
Sure.
letting your energy through, but as far as blocking and lines, no.
Okay.
And even though we wrote two other scripts that we didn't make, and I remember that day I was like, I need to tell Harry that I don't believe in this movie, the earlier other drafts, and I was nervous because I was like, and I think either one of us went first, and the other one was like, I'm so relieved, so I can't. I think I remember I went
We
first,
agreed. It's not
and
good.
the other one was like, oh, thank God. And even though we scrapped it, which is important because that's the process. You've got to fail along the way, and you've got to
Right.
recognize the failures in order to gain wisdom from them. So not hold on too tightly, but I reread some of the older scripts not that long ago, and there were scenes, Harry, that we lifted from some of those old
Oh,
drafts. So there was like this sort of folding in, and
yeah.
but really it was about this friendship, borrowing a lot from our personal lives, and then these fictional characters, very fictionalized, but also details like the birth mother and the kind of class situation or chaos of my childhood. Those were all kind of thrown in there.
Interesting. So, for both of you, the title is a famous cliche, but also describes the circumstance of the
Yeah.
dynamic duel perfectly. In the spectrum between Hook and Crook, where do you think the story best resides?
Hmm.
What is the hook and what is the crook
Well, the
as far
crook,
as you
so
understand
this
it?
is a saying I heard
Patrick.
from my family.
I
Oh
don't
wait,
know, man. I'm just
Oh, you're
making up
just
a
oh,
spectrum.
okay. You're
I'm
just fucking
making up a
around.
spectrum, right?
You're
I
I'm
like
just,
fucking
it.
with us.
No, I know I have a question because so it
yeah,
was it's a phrase. Have you heard about it, Patrick? Have you heard by hook or by crook? It's an old
sure.
fashioned.
Yeah, it's
So
an
it was like
old
I
fashioned
think I had
cliche.
like an autograph book as a kid, and I had like a family member sign it, and they were like by hook or by crook, blah blah blah. And for some reason, it just stuck
Yeah,
in my head. But
yeah,
it's by any means you can.
yeah,
And
yeah.
but I don't know the definition of the hook or the crook. Like people would get it wrong. They'd be like crooked hooker. Like they would say all the wrong variations on the thing. But I think that
Well, a
if
hook
I think
is
of
one
hook,
thing and a crook is another. It's
yeah.
that's
Yeah, it becomes it is just straight up in the middle. If I make up a version of like crook is I'm going to go criminal, that's shy, or
right,
hook is I'm going to pull you in, but it's going to be like
right,
a insular. Was
right.
maybe it's Valentine. It's in between that we can
Yeah.
be imperfect. We can
See,
be totally imperfect and also connect.
I'm
I'm
not
making that.
so nuts.
What's that?
Yeah.
Harry?
No, you're not nuts. Um,
No, not at all.
But
that's
do
coming
it,
from
it
us.
is interesting now that we've brought it up to note,
Yeah.
really clearly that something about the title, it's almost like Silas and I and Steakhouse, our unfailing, unflagging producer. The three of us made this movie. It was very difficult. We
Yeah.
just literally could not give up, even when the chips were down, and then the chips were down again, and then the chips were down again. It wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough. It was too hard. And then suddenly everyone showed up and started filming it, and we just basically just took a lot of time. And so, but the title actually reflects the production almost more than it reflects the film itself, the characters and
That's a
stuff, the
good point.
story.
This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2026.